Spoiler alert, Chuck Berry is not on this list. Alright, let's jump right into the list. Number 10, Niles Rodgers. Niles Rodgers. Now, if you're not into the funk, R&B, gospel world, you may not know a whole lot about Niles Rodgers. But let me tell you, the guy has unbelievable chops, and we so overlook rhythm playing, but it is so important. Going direct in and compressing, just the way he sculpts his tone. And he has been on so many records, just so many hit records. The guy is just unreal and definitely deserves to be on this list. Number 9, John Mayer. So he's really the only guy who's an acoustic player on this list. So that's a spoiler alert ahead of time. Hey, you bluegrass guys out there, let me know who I'm missing. If you have somebody that you might nominate that can really play with the best of them on the acoustic guitar. But John Mayer has, certainly he's not the first one to ever play in a percussive style. And I may be coming off a high because just a couple weeks ago I saw him live. And just amazing what he can do on a guitar. Not to mention his impact on gear. Obviously, with 2-Rock and Paul Reed Smith, I mean, he's had a signature model with Fender. But the Silver Sky is really something special. He took a Strat, and with the help of, with Paul Reed Smith, obviously, they improved the Strat. And it is a better guitar. That's a spoiler for maybe an upcoming video on Strats. And that brings us to our qualifications. What are our criteria to determine the people on this list? Well, number 1 is chops and technical ability. You have to have mastery of the instrument and be able to do amazing things on it. That's number 1. Number 2 is stylistic influence. And, did you change the game when it comes to the approach of the guitar? Because there are thousands of players that have amazing chops. I mean, just take a look on Instagram. You'll see guys just doing, guys and girls doing amazing things. But did you change the game? Did you innovate the approach to the guitar? And then, of course, what was your impact when it comes to the gear world? What were your game changes there? Because gear is part of this instrument. If we didn't have the gear to go along with it, we couldn't make the sounds. So that's the criteria, which brings us to the next spot on the list. Number 8 is Pat Metheny. Now, I couldn't leave you jazz guys out of this list, and Pat Metheny may have some of the best chops on this list. Maybe. His contributions to the gear world maybe are a little lacking, but his influence on jazz guitarists can't really be overstated. Just what an amazing guy when it comes to playing that jazz guitar. So, Pat Metheny. There you go, jazz guys. All right, number 7. Number 7 is Steve Vai. Now, obviously, Crossroads, iconic. Just listen to anything Steve Vai has done, and you're like, holy crap, this guy is something special. But also with now a couple signature guitars and the design of the monkey grip. Shout out to Chipson. The monkey grip has changed the guitar industry forever. But yeah, whether it's the Gem or the Pia, doing that single hum setup, really, he really popularized that and pushed that Also, the way he uses delays and effects and stereo and just his approach to not only playing live but recording guitar. He's been a big force in the gear world. Next on the list, number 6 is Yngwie Malmsteen. Yes, Yngwie, Mr. Scalloped Fretboard himself. Obviously, unbelievable player, but here's a guy who really popularized and pushed this neoclassical electric guitar, you know, the melding of classical music and metal and creating almost a genre. Obviously, the popularization of the scalloped fretboard, he's not the first person to do that. Just unbelievable. Definitely deserves a spot on this list. Alright, number 5. We are in the top 5 guitarists of all time. Here's another one for you jazz swing guys. Charlie Christian. Charlie Christian. One of the first ones in one of the biggest bands in the world at the time, the Benny Goodman Band, to bring electric guitar and to bring the electric guitar solo into the world of jazz swing. What he did on that guitar, look him up. Obviously, we're going way back for this into the 40s and the 50s. But he's a guy that doesn't get talked about very much because we are, you know, we're into our modern rock and roll people, or maybe that's just the world that I live in, and blues and rock and roll. We don't think about some of these early guys. But Charlie Christian was in a class of his own. So he makes it on this list. Number 4, Les Paul. No, that's not just a guitar model. There was actually a dude named Les Paul, and he was unreal. Les Paul, Mary Ford, look them up. The guy just had unbelievable chops, unbelievably great player. But besides all of that, his signature model has signature models. It's unbelievable. The Les Paul guitar is one of the big 3 guitars when you think about electric guitar. He absolutely changed the game, especially with the two P90s and then with the humbuckers. All of the gear, and the guy like pretty much invented looping. He invented looping. So many innovations in not just the guitar, but music and music production. A genius, a true genius. Again, somebody that was from yesteryear that doesn't get thought of when we talk about guitarists, but unbelievable. Les Paul could not be ignored from this list. Number 3. Now, all you country guys out there are probably fuming and getting all hot and bothered and saying, "How come you ain't got no country guys?" Well, y'all, here we go. Chet Atkins. Number 3, Chet Atkins. Chicken picking. You ever heard of it? Chet Atkins. Not only reinvented country guitar playing, chicken picking has an influence in metal as well. A lot of metal guys go back and study chicken picking to help improve their speed. Not only that, his Gretsch guitars, his Gretsch Country Gentlemen's, and his influence in gear, some of his influences in the gear market. Look up Chet Atkins, watch him play, and I think he deserves this spot on this list. So before we go any further, I want to pull out some honorable mentions. So I want to throw out the name Joe Satriani, and I know people are going to be angry that he is not on this list. Chops-wise, obviously deserves to be on this list. Maybe less contributions to the gear market, but Do you guys, 80s guys and metal guys can tell me how terribly stupid I am for not putting him on this list. But Satriani, unbelievable. Robert Johnson falls short of this list. Obviously, the guy who just, if you're a blues guitarist, you study Robert Johnson. A guy who lived almost 100 years ago, is influencing today's blues guitarist. I can think of, certainly there's a bunch of newer players, Tosin Abbosi, guys like that, who maybe just a few more years, he might creep up on this list. Joe Bonamassa, Orianthi. Of course, the Edge. One guitarist I want to mention, who I think most people don't think about in this honorable mention section. Go try to play Operator, and then tell me he's not at least an honorable mention here. And that's Jim Croce. Jim Croce, of course, his life was cut short. Great folk player. His songs are unbelievable. And what he did on the acoustic guitar in the folk world is pretty amazing. So those are some guys that I thought maybe should be mentioned, but didn't actually make the cut. So, without further ado, in the number 2 spot is Mr. Edward Van Halen. Was not the first person to ever do tapping, but certainly made it a thing. Certainly put it on the map. And just go listen to Eruption, and if it doesn't move you in some ways, I mean, I've been hearing that song since I was a kid, and it's still, I'll put that song on, and it still just blows me away. Obviously, his contribution to the gear market is unreal. I mean, he has a whole freaking company, a gear company, and so yeah, I mean, the Super Strat, Eddie Van Halen. You know, things like the Gem and the Pia might not exist without Eddie Van Halen ripping a Gibson pickup out of a Les Paul and putting it in a Strat. You know, that his Frankenstein guitar, you know, started a thing. Obviously the 5150 amp, which is still just standard operating procedure for metal guitarists and hard rock guitarists. The use of phaser, I mean, his use of modulation really influenced what would happen in the 80s, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, Eddie Van Halen, come on. And there's only one other guitarist that could just slightly edge out Mr. Van Halen for the number 1 guitarist of all time. I don't think this is going to be very controversial. You probably already guessed it. But of course, it's Jimi Hendrix. That's all you have to say. The Strat. And listen here. When most people think of an electric guitar, they think of the Strat. That's the picture that would come up. If you ask some random non-guitar player, what does an electric guitar look like? They would draw a Strat. And I'm convinced that that's because of Jimi Hendrix. Well, it's the guitar Jimi Hendrix played, so. Obviously, Marshall. I mean, not that Marshall wasn't a thing before, but that Strat into a Marshall sound. His use of fuzz. Again, not the first to use fuzz. Not the first to use a Marshall amp. Not the first to play a Strat. But a guy who just revolutionized how those things were used. The Unify, the fuzz. There's just so many gear contributions when it comes to the use of gear in a creative manner. Reverse reverb. So many things. Jimi Hendrix. Not only that, he created a whole style of playing that as a matter of fact, one of the people on this list, John Mayer, I would put in that Jimi Hendrix school of electric guitar playing. You know, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Just think, without Jimi Hendrix, do we have Stevie Ray Vaughan? Do we have John Mayer? Do we have a lot of other players that played in that style? He's just the best. He's just the best. And I don't think there's a lot of argument with that one there. So, let me know what you think. Who did I snub? Who did I put up on this list that maybe shouldn't have been? Let me know. I'm sure Rolling Stone would disagree with some of my lists, but I don't care. But anyway, let me know what you think down below. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff. And remember, it's always about the song. Peace.